The NFL is famous for tough players, but these ones went even further. Here are the 15 toughest players in NFL history, known for their aggressive style. 1. Joey Porter. Let's dive into Joey the Showstopper Porter's world for an exciting start. This Arizona Cardinals linebacker didn't just make it onto the tough guy list, he practically signed it with a sledgehammer. In 2009, he was voted the second dirtiest player, showing he's the epitome of toughness and intimidation on the football field. So why is he one of the meanest players to ever play? Let's go back to 2003 when he made a jaw-dropping late hit on Browns punter Chris Gardocki. It wasn't just a late hit, it was like declaring war. Gardocki was so shaken that he even gave Porter the finger on the spot. Porter isn't just a one-time thing. He consistently creates chaos. We're talking about bone-crushing tackles and crucial penalties that not only change the game, but also send shivers down his opponent's spines. 2. David Deacon Jones. Meet Deacon Jones, also known as the Secretary of Defense. He wasn't just a great find in the 14th round of the draft. He was a football legend. Have you ever heard of a sack? Well, Deacon came up with that term. He was one of the first to bring speed, agility, and raw power to the defensive line, making it tough for any quarterback. In 1967 and 1968, he earned the title of NFL Defensive Player of the Year, 2 years in a row. This guy was a gemstone of gridiron greatness, leaving a lasting impact on the game. 3. Lyle Alzado, a guy who took being tough to a whole new level. On the football field, he was like a storm in a helmet. When he played, you could bet things were going to get rough, but in a good way. He wasn't just strong, he had a temper that could make a volcano seem calm. Instead of just tackling, he'd push and shove opponents, and if he felt like it, he might even throw his helmet at them. Lyle Alzado was the kind of player who made mean seem like an understatement. 4. Brian Dawkins. Now let's talk about Brian Dawkins, a guy with a surprising mix of friendliness and toughness. He could flash a smile at you 1 minute and then knock you down the next. Sports Illustrated didn't just criticize him when they called him one of the dirtiest players in the league. They were pointing out a truth. So, why is he on our list of meanest players? Well, consider the hit he made on Giants wide receiver Ike Hilliard in 2002. It wasn't just a regular tackle. It changed Hilliard's career, keeping him out for the season, and Dawkins had to pay a hefty $50,000 fine. But here's the catch. Dawkins had this Mr. Nice Guy image that somehow made referees overlook his mischievous moves. It's like he had a special card that let him escape trouble hidden in his football jersey. 5. Hines Ward, known for his big smile and powerful blocks, is on our list of the NFL's toughest players. Despite his friendly grin, he was tough on the football field. In 2008, he made a block against Cincinnati Bengals linebacker Keith Rivers that was so strong it broke Rivers' jaw. This hit was so impactful that the NFL had to make a new rule in 2009, called the Hines Ward Rule, to prevent such aggressive plays. Ward's toughness forced the NFL to rethink its regulations. So while his smile may be worth $1 million, Ward's playing style made him one of the meanest in the league. 6. Cortland Finnegan. The guy known for being so mean that there's a joke named after him. You might recall the famous fight with Andre Johnson from the Houston Texans. It wasn't just a small disagreement, it turned into a full-blown, no-holds-barred brawl, almost like something you'd see in WWE. What's interesting is that Finnegan actually enjoyed every moment of it. He thrives on having a tough guy reputation. There's a joke circulating that he should change his name to Innigan because Andre Johnson knocked the F out of him. Surprisingly, Finnegan proudly embraces that joke as if it's a badge of honor. 7. Richie Incognito. A football player whose last name doesn't match his on-field behavior. He's known as the 7th dirtiest player in the NFL, with a history that would surprise even the strongest players. In just 2008, he faced $35,000 in fines for 3 incidents against the Washington Redskins. These included a personal foul for mistreating an official, a major face mask penalty, and a chop block. It's a combination of actions that brings a lot of trouble his way. 8. James Harrison. James Harrison, a guy who sees fines as if they were prized possessions. Last season, he got fined a whopping $120,000 just for making illegal hits. But here's the kicker. He's proud of it. Think back to those hits on Cleveland receivers Mohamed Massaquoi and Joshua Cribbs. Those weren't just regular tackles. They were like bold declarations. And don't even get me started on the quarterbacks he's given a tough time. Drew Brees, Jason Campbell, and Ryan Fitzpatrick all know what it's like to face the wrath of Harrison. He's not just playing the game, he's making a statement with every move. 9. Ray Lewis. When you think about a tough football player who can make hard hits, Ray Lewis is one of the first names that should come to mind. He didn't just tackle opponents, he went right through them, making sure they felt the impact of his strength. But it's not just his physical strength that makes him tough, it's also his skill. In 2010, at the age of 35, Lewis was fined $25,000 in 2 separate incidents. And let's not forget his impressive stats: 1,129 tackles, 487 assists, 40.5 sacks, 31 interceptions, 80 passes deflected, 18 forced fumbles, and 19 fumble recoveries. Those numbers aren't just statistics, they represent a history of being tough and determined on the field. 10. Dick Butkus. Now let's talk about Dick Butkus, the NFL boogeyman. Imagine the scariest football players, and Butkus is the one who should give you chills. He's linked to the phrase "monsters of the Midway," and he's the reason for it. Why? Because he was the heart of the Bears' defense. Tough, relentless, and downright frightening. From 1965 to 1973, he wasn't just playing. He was ruling the field. Butkus made an incredible 1,120 tackles, 22 interceptions, and 27 fumble recoveries. But it's not just about the numbers, it's the fear he brought to the game. Butkus wasn't just a player, he was a walking nightmare on the football field. 11. Roy "Rulebreaker" Williams, a guy so famous that the NFL had to make a new rule just for him. Ever heard of the horse collar rule? Well, Roy Williams is the reason it exists. In 2004, he went on a solo mission, taking out not 1, not 2, but 3 players with his infamous tackles, including the legendary Terrell Owens. What makes Roy Williams one of the toughest? He didn't just bend the rules, he smashed them. His tackles caused such a stir that even the rulebook couldn't keep pace. He didn't just play the game, he played to mess things up, confuse, and totally take over. That's why Roy "Rulebreaker" Williams is in a league of his own. 12. Albert Haynesworth. This guy isn't just a player, he's like a wrecking crew on the field, and his history is like a story from a Hollywood movie. Remember 2006? That's when Haynesworth got really famous for stomping on the head of Dallas Cowboys center Andre Gurotti. It wasn't just a penalty, it was a big deal. Gurotti left the field bleeding from his head, and Haynesworth got the longest in-season suspension ever for something that happened during a game. 5 games. So why is Haynesworth on our list of the NFL's toughest guys? Well, the Gurotti thing wasn't a one-time mistake. It's like the main example of how Haynesworth acts. He plays right on the edge of chaos, and sometimes he goes over that edge and causes chaos. It's not just being wild. It's like he's trying to scare anyone who wants to compete with him. Be careful if you challenge me. 13. Chuck Bednarik. Chuck Bednarik was a football legend who played on both offense and defense without a break. A true 60-minute man. He wasn't a gentle giant. In fact, he was downright terrifying on the field. Opponents were scared to face him. That's why he's considered one of the NFL's toughest players, like being carved into the Mount Rushmore of mean football players. One reason for his reputation was the massive hit he delivered to Frank Gifford. It was so powerful that the whole league held its breath, wondering if Gifford could ever play again. Gifford did come back, but only after realizing just how unstoppable Chuck Bednarik was, like a human wrecking ball. 14. Devin Witherspoon. This guy didn't just appear. He burst onto the scene in 2022, playing really hard. Even the experienced players were surprised by how intense he was. Witherspoon doesn't just tackle, he hits so hard that it stays with you for days. So why is he quickly moving up in the NFL rankings? Let's start with that famous hit against the Indiana Hoosiers. It was like a big announcement to the whole league saying, "Hey, Devin Witherspoon is here." He made 33 tackles on his own, caught 3 interceptions, and stopped 14 passes. And to finish it off, he got recognized as an All-American at the end of the year. That's a big deal for someone so new to the game. 15. Deuce Vaughn. Let's wrap up the list with a guy who's only 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighs 179 pounds. You might be surprised to find him on a list of tough players, but don't be fooled. This dynamo proves that size isn't everything in football. Vaughn doesn't settle for just gaining yards and scoring touchdowns. He's all about being aggressive. Even though he's smaller, he tackles opponents with such power that you'd think he's much bigger. This guy doesn't just compete. He goes head-to-head with giants, making them question their choices. So, if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more updates.